What's going on, guys? It's Dem here and welcome to another episode of DemmSec. Okay, so I had a few messages from you guys on the Facebook page wondering what my thoughts were about Kali Linux. I'm not going to go into what Kali Linux is right now because I'm actually going to do that over when we get into the actual review. Overall, I'm really fond of Kali Linux. I mean, it's just the next step from Backtrack, and I can't really fault that. I mean, from Backtrack 4 to Backtrack 5, there was quite a lot of changes. I mean, it went from being, I can't even remember what Backtrack 4 was based on, but I know it had KDE as its window manager. It went to GNOME and it started being Ubuntu based and stuff like that. So I'm guessing this is just the next progression, and even though the name's changed, everything's pretty much still the same. Something I will mention throughout this, I do actually talk about the forensics being the only feature, but those are actually available inside Backtrack, and you'll actually see me showing that towards the end of the video. This is actually going to be a really long video because obviously it's a new pen testing distro. It's got a lot of stuff to cover, so sit back, probably about a 20-minute video, and I hope you enjoy. Okay, so this is booting up Kali Linux, and if I haven't already explained it, Kali Linux is essentially Backtrack 6. As you know, we've been using Backtrack 5 R3 for a fairly long time, and R2, and we've been on Backtrack 5 in general for a very long time. And this is supposed to be its successor, the Kali Linux, or Kali Linux, it's pronounced however you want really. This is the live disk. I do have it installed on this machine, but I just thought I'd show you the live disk because it actually has some notable features. So obviously you've got your normal live features here and you have your install feature, but here is something new which I haven't seen in Backtrack, which is a live forensic mode. And I've been looking through Kali Linux. This isn't the first time I've booted it up. As I mentioned before, I do have it installed in this VM, but I thought I'd show you the live disk. But there is a lot of new forensic tools because historically you haven't been able to use Backtrack for forensics because it would auto mount partitions and auto mount swap files, which when you're doing forensics is a problem because if you edit that driver, all the evidence is no longer valid. So this forensic mode essentially turns off any kind of auto mounting and makes it a properly live distribution which doesn't touch the disk at all, which allows you to run all kinds of different forensic tools which are actually installed inside the operating system. So if I just find my mouse, probably inside the VM, yeah, and disconnect this drive, and then I'll just do a Control-Alt-Delete in the VM just to restart it, and this will boot up normally. So this is the normal boot up of Kali Linux. So a bit of geek talk about the OS. Backtrack 5 was based on Ubuntu, which is based on Debian, but Kali Linux is actually based directly on Debian. The reason they've done this is because the Debian base image, I guess you could call it, gives them a lot more freedom than Ubuntu does. And they're also not tied by the Ubuntu repositories and stuff like that. As I mentioned, it is based off Debian, and their repositories actually sync with the Debian repositories. That's the wrong login. Sync with the Debian repositories every hour, I think it is, so you actually get the most up-to-date Debian software there is. If I just finish logging in here, if we just full screen this as well. So just for a if you're wanting to see how it performs and you want to compare how it performs, I've got this running inside of, I think it's got 4 gig of RAM, this VM, and it's running on all 4 cores of my processor, all 8 threads because it is an i7. And I've got to admit, it boots up a lot faster, and it seems to perform a lot better than the Ubuntu counterpart, and I think that's just down to Debian having a lot less bloatware. The interface, if you've ever used like something like Ubuntu 8 or you've just installed the standard GNOME package on Debian, is extremely similar to that. I'm just going to change the background because you can't really see the borders and stuff. Let's pick a light background. That is an obnoxious colour. That'll do. So yeah, very much like any kind of default GNOME setup you've ever used. You may recognise this area up here from Backtrack. Same kind of drop downs, because obviously Backtrack uses the old version of GNOME before it became Unity. Accessories, kind of things you'd recognise. A few new things. You've got Truecrypt built right in here. I'm not sure whether Backtrack had Truecrypt built in, but it's an awesome thing to see, because obviously if you're going to be using a pen testing operating system, you're going to want to have your hard drives encrypted. It's got some electronic features. It's got the Arduino IDE built right in. Graphics doesn't really have much. Don't really need that in a pen testing distro, and I do call it a pen testing distro, but actually overall it's more of just a hackers, and I don't mean that in terms of computer hackers, just any kind of hardware hacker or anyone who plays with electronics. It's turning into a much more wide operating system. And about that, Kali Linux or Offensive Security, I think they're still going under that name, but the people who actually make this operating system actually encourage you to make essentially your own branches of it. So if you want to add a specific package, they actually urge you to add the package and then create an image of the operating system, and there is actually tools built right in here. If you head over to the Kali Linux website, they actually document how to create your own images and how to upload them to their site. So they're actually, even though Ubuntu and Linux is a community effort, they're trying to bring the community back into the actual operating system of Backtrack and Kali Linux, the kind of pen testing distributions, which is awesome to see. It means we're going to see a lot more features and a lot more third-party developers coming out with tools for this operating system, which I think is absolutely awesome. So in internet, you don't see a Firefox here, you actually see Iceweasel. I've never actually used Iceweasel myself, but interesting to see them not going with Firefox. Kali Linux, this would be similar to the Backtrack menu. It's got all of your exploits, and as I mentioned before, there's these forensics tools. I'm not sure whether these were in Backtrack, I'm fairly sure they weren't. Office, you just got a quick note keep note, which is a open source version of Word, essentially. Just a little text editor, essentially. Programming, you've got the Arduino IDE, you got PyCrust, and Excel said, I'm not much of a hardware programming guy, but yeah, you can do your programming there. Sound recording, sound recorder. I haven't actually seen any kind of evidence gathering. I think that might be in here. Reporting tools, yeah, that's where you've got your media capture and stuff. You may ask why I'm bothered about that. When you're actually doing pen testing, you have to actually have evidence of what you're doing, so you can't just walk in and say, yeah, we've hacked all your machines, when you haven't. You have to have evidence of that. Obviously, just common sense there. And then you've got the system tools. You may recognise this being up here on Backtrack, but it's essentially the same menu. It's got all the different configs, but it actually has some more forensic tools there. You've got the fast forensic imager, where you can take a image of a hard drive very quickly, because when you're doing forensics, you may not know, you never really do actual work on the hard drive. You take an image of it and do all your work on that, so then you don't actually edit the actual evidence. You're working on an image at all times, and that's just so you don't end up losing any data. You've got offcrack here. I think this was in Backtrack, but usually it doesn't come with any tables. No, it doesn't, so you'd have to go out and install your own tables. I think you can hit install. No, you have to actually go out and download them. Obviously the free ones are free, but you've got to pay for the larger ones. That's about it, really. I mean, we could go through some of the tools that are different. One thing which people have been noting is if you actually go into the file system, there's no pen test folder. Not much of a problem. You have your terminal, you can just load your files from there. I wasn't able, if you type set, it kind of echoes out the contents of the set application, but the only way I've seen of actually opening this up is to go to exploitation tools and social engineering, and then SE toolkit. I wonder if I type SE-toolkit. See, that runs it, but I'm used to typing set, so there is some minor changes which you will have to get used to, but overall I'm really enjoying Kali Linux. I think the interface is a lot cleaner and it feels a lot less bloated. It feels like it's more of a purpose-built operating system, which, don't get me wrong, Backtrack was, but Backtrack had the unfortunate bloatware of Ubuntu. Even though they tried to remove most of that, quite a lot of Ubuntu's bloatware is in the kernel, and I'm not saying that's a bad thing, because Ubuntu is made to be simple, and it's made to be accessible for people who aren't Linux administrators, so those things are actually meant to be in there. But when you've got a purpose-built operating system like that, I think lowering it back down to a base Debian kind of operating system has done them a lot of favours. You've got this new menu here, top 10 security tools, you got your burp suite, you've got Hydra. It's strange to see Hydra here, and I don't mean strange in a bad way. I mean, every single time on Backtrack I've wanted Hydra or Medusa's the one I prefer. You've had to manually compile it for the kernel, which gets annoying, so it's nice to see that in there. Obviously you've got your Metasploit framework, and now there's actually options inside of Metasploit here. You can actually update it from a button, so if you are wanting to upgrade to Kali Linux and want to follow my old tutorials, you can just click that to go ahead and update it. I know people have been having quite a lot of problems updating on the Ubuntu one, but personally I would actually upgrade to Kali Linux. I really enjoy the interface, and I don't know, I'm a sucker for a clean interface. I mean, you can pin stuff down here, you can pin your most used applications. It still runs as root as the default user, but obviously it is Debian, so you can create your own user. If you do install this on your device, I wouldn't recommend running, like, logging in as root, because obviously there's security risks involved with that. I'm not going to go through all the tools. Pretty much everything that you've seen in Backtrack is in here. You're not actually losing anything. In most cases you're actually gaining some tools. I mean, this list seems a bit longer, maybe not. The main things I'm seeing is in these forensic tools. You've got the antivirus forensic tools, so you can check a hard drive image for a rootkit. Check rootkit again. You've got autopsy, whatever, I can't even pronounce that. There's a lot more forensic tools, and I'm not sure I've seen these in Backtrack, so these are absolutely a welcome addition to Backtrack. And even for people who aren't involved in forensics, being able to check a hard drive for a rootkit outside of Windows is going to be really awesome. If there was some way to remove it in here, that'd be crazy, but obviously there won't, because they're focused on forensics and not actual, like, virus repair and stuff like that. I'll just go through here. Forensic tools, I'm not too big on them, but I think they're a definite welcome addition. System services, as always, you've got your web servers, your Pro, Metasploit, Start, and they actually seem to be pushing the Pro version of Metasploit a lot more in this, which I guess I'm not too bothered about, because if you are doing pen testing, you will have the Pro version of Metasploit, because obviously it has extra features. But in my mind, an open source operating system should favour open source applications more. But then again, I'm contradicting myself all over the place here. The Metasploit Pro product is awesome. It comes with a lot of other features, such as tunneling through VPNs and stuff like that. So if you want to do some pivoting, it does it via a VPN rather than plain text communications, and that feature alone is pretty awesome. Would I pay for Pro just for that? No, obviously not one feature, but there is a lot of other features. You also get access to a different exploit repository, so the latest exploits from Metasploit, the newly released 0 days, the stuff that they actually pay for themselves. They're I can't remember the company that owns Metasploit now, but the company that owns Metasploit actually pays for those exploits and puts them into their Pro packages. So if you were actually doing pen testing, you obviously would get those, because then you can brute more boxes and break into more boxes. OS backdoors, you've got same things as usual. Overall, really welcome addition, and as mentioned, this is the first iteration of the operating system. It was released not long ago, so it'd be great. It's going to be great to see where they actually go with this. Okay, so I just thought I'd go ahead and correct myself a little bit. In applications on Backtrack, they actually do have forensic options. I know it doesn't have a forensic boot option, which I might actually also be wrong about, but I was actually just looking on the Kali Linux website, and they're actually trying to make, the idea of Kali Linux isn't to add more forensics tools, it's to make it into more of an operating system than, like, instead of just being a live distribution. And that's what they're talking about here. Obviously the tools will be all more up to date inside of Kali Linux, and because Kali Linux is going to be the future, I don't think there's going to be any more iterations to Backtrack 5R3. I would definitely recommend going over and checking it out, using that instead. All the tools there, it's just a bit like of a different interface, and probably the tools are more up to date. As I said, I haven't looked deep enough to actually check all that, and I thought the only features that were being added were forensics tools, but clearly not. And as I mentioned before, inside the documentation, they actually urge you to make custom Kali images. So from here you can live build a custom Kali ISO. So if you wanted a specific set of tools or whatever, you can do that. And also what's actually really awesome about this is, just let me go back here. They've got, Kali Linux on the ARM architecture. They actually have a version of Kali Linux for the Raspberry Pi, which is awesome. I don't see why you'd really use a fully fledged hacking OS on the Raspberry Pi. I mean, you could use it as a attack Dropbox, where you just plug it into a network somewhere with a battery pack and then remotely connect into the device itself. But for that, you wouldn't need a fully fledged operating system. All you need is some VPN tools and some proxy tools. So I mean, it's cool that it's on there. I like that they're supporting the ARM architecture, and you can see it could be run on the Chromebook and stuff like that. Like that, I see the point of. I guess it'd be more worthwhile if the Chromebook was cheaper, if it was more disposable hardware, or it was more suited to being a penetration test box. It'd be awesome, but as you all know, the Chromebook's quite pricey for what it is. But even still, I think it's awesome that they actually have ARM support. Contribute to Kali. You can mirror, so you can put your you can become a mirror. You can put your files into mirrors and stuff like that. You can do network installs. So the idea of Kali, from what I'm getting, is to become more of an operating system and less of just a operating system, but more of a live CD. And I can understand that. I mean, I could see this operating system being installed on some real hardware and being used to do forensics on hard drives and stuff like that. And I mean, they've gone with Debian for the security, but obviously you still don't want to log in as root because there's obvious security flaws and security concerns there, I guess. So I'd recommend downloading it and checking it out. Obviously you can essentially follow the same tutorial as my Backtrack one, installing that in a VM, but instead of going for Backtrack, you just go to downloads here. No, I just want the download, and you can pick the right version that you want. i386 is 32-bit, AMD 64-bit. Simple, really. This is, as I mentioned, still the first iteration of Kali Linux, and it's going to be awesome to see where they actually go to it. And as I mentioned here, this is how you can create your own live disk. So as I mentioned before, if you want, even if it was something simple, because usually the live disks don't have an up-to-date version of Metasploit. So if you were actually wanting to use it as a live distribution, or you could literally just update Metasploit and then create an ISO for it, burn it to a disk, and then you've got an up-to-date version of Metasploit. And I can see people using USB drives for this, and that is an awesome feature, and I love that they're pushing that with this here. Hope you enjoyed that. As I mentioned, this is just my first impressions of Kali Linux. I have used it as a bit, but I haven't actually delved too deep into it. I'm not actually aware of what the major changes are, well, apart from the fact that it's now running Debian instead of Ubuntu, which is a fairly big change in itself, but I'm not really seeing the point of Kali Linux at the moment. Obviously it's just the latest iteration of Offensive Security's operating system, but I don't see why they've gone with a different name and a different architecture rather than just going to Backtrack 6. As of yet, as I mentioned, this is still the first version of Kali Linux, and I'm really excited to see where it goes. Personally, I'm going to be using Kali Linux from now on because it's the most up-to-date thing. All the tools are going to be up-to-date and all the support's going to be there from the community. So I hope you enjoyed, as I mentioned. I'll see you next time. If you have liked this video, remember to hit that like button. It really does help me out. It helps me gauge what kind of videos you guys want to see. If you enjoy my videos as a whole, I really recommend hitting the subscribe button. I always attempt to click up the point up there, but it's actually down there now. Remember to hit that subscribe button. If you do have any questions, leave a comment. If you want to send me a PM, go for it. If it's a relevant question and it isn't something blatantly illegal, I will help you with it. As always, you can go over to the forums and ask for help there, DemmSec.co.uk. I do have a gaming channel. I keep pushing this, but if you guys are interested in watching me play games or anything like that, do head over to that channel. You'll see that in just a second, the link to that, but that's Dem the Gamer. I really urge you to go and subscribe. It really would help me out a lot, and yeah, see you next time. Bye bye. On the left there's another one of my hacking videos. That video actually shows you how to crash every computer on a network with a very simple tool. On the right there's my gaming channel. I'm going to be talking about the PS4 and my thoughts about it. I really recommend going over there, and if you could do me a massive favour and also subscribe over there on my gaming channel, that'd be a huge help. As I mentioned before, I hope you've enjoyed, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.